Hi, this presentation is going to go over content analysis, and this is an ideal tool for studying social and cultural phenomena, any of the artifacts of human society, and parsing them into categories. And content analysis allows us to reduce large amounts of information, usually in the form of text, into something that's quantifiable and meaningful, which will allow us to draw some conclusions. And as a method, it's nice because it's unobtrusive. We don't have any interactions with human subjects, so we can't influence the data, and the ethical implications are far less concerning compared to other methods. We can define it as a systematic analysis of message characteristics, and in a separate video we talked about the difference between emergent and ready-made coding, which corresponds to latent and manifest, and whether or not we're going to leave qualitative data as text or turn it into something that is more quantitative, which will allow us to use some of our quantitative techniques. Sometimes people opt for a combination of the two. And some examples that we might use content analysis for, some of the artifacts might be magazine articles, newspaper articles, video games, transcripts from speeches or interviews, blogs, journals, historical documents, Facebook sites, etc. So let's take a look at how we do a content analysis. And this is sort of just a rough overview, but typically when we're doing one, we want to start by defining a problem. The example we discussed in our previous presentation was the personal ads from the Davis article. Men seeking women and women seeking men. Do the personal ads reveal gender stereotypes? And so that was sort of the problem that Davis was dealing with, and then this required operationally defining the terms, what are the desired attributes of romantic partners, and then deciding how to go about coding. So first creating the codes from an emergent study of the qualitative text, and then going through with a ready-made code sheet to complete the analysis. So this required first defining the population and coding units. So all of the personal ads under these categories were studied. The others were neglected in the Davis study. And then we have to decide how we're going to sample. Will it just be a convenience sample, where we look at the first few we see? Will it be a random sample? And so on. And then another concern will be training raters how to code. And then we'll also look at intercoder reliability. So broken down into stages, it'll look something like this: identifying a population of documents like personal ads, determining the unit of analysis. In this case, it was the personal ad itself. Selecting a sample. There was a convenience sample used in the Davis study, which was not representative. Designing a coding procedure, so that means reading through the ads and coming up with some attributes that could later be applied. Developing appropriate analysis techniques. What are we going to do with the data once it's collected? And then what kind of conclusions will we draw? Recall that Davis found evidence for the gender stereotypes. And what we're aiming for, doing a good content analysis, is having a high level of reliability and validity. And so that's something we need to ensure is true of our coding schemes, that what we're measuring is what is intended, and that we're reliably coding things. And the way we check that is through inter-rater reliability tests to demonstrate both. And the goal is to achieve a high level of intercoder reliability. So the way that works is you have separate raters independently evaluate a message like a personal ad, and then fill out the code sheet, and then compare the two code sheets. And ideally they look identical, but we're willing to tolerate a little bit of disparity between them. You're looking for a level of agreement that's around 80 or 90% at least, depending on the complexity of the message in the coding scheme. There is also computer coding, which we have not mentioned, but there's software, two different bodies of software, two different types, I guess. One is helpful for cataloging and organizing your text. examples of those in Vivo and Qualris are good for just sort of keeping your documents systematically ordered. And so when you're doing that initial pass through and developing attributes, this will help. The other kind is what we call text mining software, which really automates the process and does the identification for you of attributes. And as this software improves, the validity of those uh, identified themes will be improving. Currently, it's not perfect, but if you're dealing with big data, it's indispensable because it's impossible to manually code, say, 10 million Twitter tweets or something like that. So text mining software is certainly used in the private sector. Companies want to study customer reviews and those kinds of things, for instance, or social media data. Here's an example of a content analysis. Al-Shebab did a content analysis of children and television. And the way she did that was by looking at several hours of programming on Kuwaiti and Egyptian children channels. And she did 60 randomly selected 30-minute segments on these channels of coding. And she kept track of the gender and racial composition of the key characters, and then used a t-test for independent samples to identify any statistically significant differences. And what she found was that females and racial minorities were underrepresented on these television shows based on her data. And the implications were then discussed in terms of socialization and the process of othering. So that is, it's not unusual. Content analysis examples often look at issues of representation and inequality. All right, that's going to do it. Thank you.